So for tonight, the plan for us is to learn a little bit how to add content. Just a second. How to add content to the blank template that we did last time. I guess Mike, you're not here. And to add certain parts to it. So I'll take you through those steps, and we're going to learn about the different functions. It's going to be a bit tedious, but I think it makes sense to look up the function we need to use each time into the documentation, into the WordPress reference, so that you know what those functions are about. And I also have uploaded the second version of the same theme that we uploaded last time with additional functionality. So we can try uploading it as well and see how that changes the site and actually pulls the content. And after that, Mark is going to give us a demo on your live site that utilizes a theme, custom theme. So this is the plan. Any questions or comments? I'm glad my machine is working, because in the previous class, it was not. It was flashing. All right, let's see here. So from last time, we remember that we need to have 2 files in order to create a theme. What are those 2 files? Who remembers? We uploaded 2 files. Index and style.css. Okay, so those are the 2. So you need to remember that those 2 things from last time. Okay, and then let's talk about. So when we displayed the site, it was blank. There was nothing there. Do you remember? We uploaded it. We followed the steps, but nothing there. So how will we go about adding a little bit of basic content? To add basic content, we're going to add some WordPress functions. And the way we're going to do it is we're going to create an HTML template, and we're going to keep on adding content to it, and eventually we're going to break it down into different PHP files. Does this make sense? And Mark, please, or Nico, at any time, if you have any comments, please go ahead and add them as well. So here's what our template looks like when we begin. And I have a link to the template. There we go. Right here. So you can grab the template from GitHub and just save it locally as index.html. One possibility is, as we go through these steps, you can try to work through, but I think what I'd like to do is actually just go through the lecture, and then so you can get an idea of the flow in the process, and then you can go back and edit of your own. All right, so we start with a blank template. This is a screenshot, and you have a version of it, and it's going to have essentially just the basic HTML template. There is really nothing much I can tell you about it, except that it does reference the style.css file, right? So how do we go about adding content? Well, the way we go about it is that we're going to dynamically grab content from the pages on the WordPress dashboard, and then add them into through PHP and display them through our theme. So we're going to start by grabbing the the title. And the first function we're going to call is the blog info function, which is going to get the title of the blog and put it in a title tag. And where does the title come from? It comes from the general settings of the blog. So this is the line. I was going to make screenshots, but it would get too tedious. So this is the line from the file that would include, that would call a couple of functions, in fact, to the title. So we're embedding PHP into a title tag, right? And this all makes sense now, right? We have the title tag is part of the HTML language.
Yeah.
And then we say here, this is PHP. And in PHP, we're calling blog info. And actually, we just learned today about functions. So this is a function because it has parents, and this function takes an argument. And
Thank you.
and then there's a
Finally something that makes sense.
great.
Finally something with a purpose.
And then we're going to dot, which means actually we're going to chain. So you can add more than one function at a time. And when you have dot between functions, we call that chaining. So we're chaining two functions together. And then the second function is going to be the WP title. And then we put our semicolon, which is going to end the PHP statement, close our PHP tag, and then close the title. And so this is the line that is going to grab the title. What I'd like us to do though is, as I mentioned, I would like us to look at each of these functions that we'll be using in the reference. So at the bottom of the page, I have posted a WordPress developer reference. Click here. I'd like to actually open it in a different window, and I didn't do that. So, but we want both tabs open. So if we go into the reference from the link, at the very bottom of the page, the first function we'd like to look into is the blog info. So the way this works is that you can search for a particular function, certainly in Codex, but you can also just search through the reference, and I put this here so you can search for any function that you want, right? And so the first one is going to be blog info, and here it is. And then we want functions. So if you select functions here, it's going to narrow down the search. And here is the blog info function. And so we read here, it displays information about the current site. It takes one parameter, string, which is an optional, the site information to display. And here is also an example of what this would look like. So this is our first function, and it's going to, now we know what it's going to do. It's going to display site information. And then the other one is the WP underscore title. Display or retrieve page title for all areas of the blog. So this is the second function that we are calling here. By default, so we might not read through all of them, but just maybe the first few. So this WP title, it takes more than one argument, but some of them are optional. So if it's optional, then you can call it without any arguments and it still will work. And this is good timing. We talked exactly about this today in the PHP class as well. So by default, the page title will display the separator before the page title. So this is what they're referring to, right? So that the blog title will be there before the page title. This is not good to display since the blog title shows up on most tabs and not more what is important, which is the page that the user is looking at. And there's SEO benefits and more details as well. So these are the lines we need to add to our file to display the title. We also want to dynamically link to the style link. And so we're going to change our URL, our link to the CSS, and we are going to say PHP blog info style sheet URL. So this becomes a dynamic linking instead of a static one to the CSS file. So we have the site title, and then we're going to embed it in HTML, and we're going to put it in an H1 tag so that it's big in font size when it displays, right? So we took the previous blog info and we're going to put it in an H1. We can also make the main header link to the home page by passing a URL to blog info. So we keep on building this up, and now we have H1, which contains a link to the blog info, and then we have the name of the home page. To get the tagline, which also is pulled from the general settings, what we can do is use the description parameter from blog info. So there are some of the possible values of the parameter, and one of them is description. And essentially, right now, we're just going to do this with not all the information, but if you decide, if you end up, when you make your own themes, then you might want to display some other parameters, and then you need to go and look up the documentation to see what else is available. In this case, we're going to use description, which displays the tagline set in settings general. The data is retrieved from the blog description record in the WP options table. Okay, so if we're talking about the table, then we're talking about SQL, right? So here is a table in the database where this data is stored. So this is how this connects. And again, I personally am pleased because we have been talking about similar topics in the PHP class, and you can see those in real life now applied here as well with WordPress. All right. So what were we looking at? This blog description record. So I'm not seeing it here. Do you see it? Well, it's not shown in the scope here, but apparently it's in the WP options table. Well, it's pulling. All right, and again, we're embedding the PHP inside the header, and then inside an H1, and we're also linking to the blog info by passing it the URL parameter.
So this is just like putting a link to the blog post image to the
Right. And so here is the URL parameter, displays the site address set in settings general. So that's where it's going to pull it from. And we're calling the blog info again with a couple different, we're getting the URL and the description through the blog info function. Does this make sense? Right? And then embedding them in HTML so that they're presentable on the page. And so the above code should display the header and tagline when previewed in WordPress. And we do have a version of a theme that we're going to upload through FTP and be able to see this in action as well. Next is the navigation. Mark, are you wondering about something I'm saying? All right. Next is the navigation, and that's defined in the menu in the WordPress dashboard, as you know. So when you first start with a new theme, there will be no menu there, so you have to turn on your menu for your own theme. When you start a new theme, there is no default menu there, and you have to make one. And you make one, we're going to make one calling it the primary menu. And after you make the menu, then you register the navigation by calling the functions.php function, and then you add the code to register the nav menus. Functions.php is the name of our function that we're going to use to provide code that has to do with the menu and the navigation, right? So, does this make sense? It's like the same way we created index.php, we're going to create functions.php and then put code in it, right?
So that doesn't go in
The functions.php?
the code, that part.
No.
Uh,
No, so let me show you the files. So here is, we actually probably won't get to the footer and header until next time, but we now have index, style, and functions.php. And here is where we register the menu. We're just starting to build this up right now. We're just doing it line by line because otherwise it would be difficult to, I think, comprehend all of it at the same time. So register nav menus. It's going to register the navigation menu, and in our next step, we are going to pass an array of key value pairs representing the menu and the menu items, right? It's an optional associative array of menu location identifiers and descriptive text. Associative array means that it's an array where the index is a string as opposed to a number, but it's still an indexed array. Because it makes sense to use an array to store the menus because they're logically related list of items, right? So if I have services, products, in contact, let's say I have services, products, about, and contact, then these are related. This is my menu. They are lists, they go together. A list is always indexed. You can use the numeric index, but you can also use an associative array where it's going to use the strings to associate. So that's what is required to be passed to the function we'll be calling. You need to make sure whatever you name your menu to use the same name in your when you're calling it. So that's important, otherwise it will not find the menu. So this is not shown here, but the nav $main nav is a variable that has been set to the name of the primary menu. And this is how you add the menu. And then everyone has been asking about the loop, right? So the loop is what allows you to display how you display posts in WordPress. And the way it works is that you're going to check if you have any posts to display. So we're going to use conditional statements and loops. we're going to check, are there any block items to display? So this would be a if statement. Are there any? Is true or false? If so, then we're going to display them. And because there is more than one, we're going to display them in a loop, right? And how do we retrieve them? We're going to retrieve them by using the post function. Iterate the post index in the loop. How do you feel about the WordPress documentation? It's okay. I don't think it's great. It's okay. What do you think? And also note that the syntax below is going to use a compressed format. So you can write this out in a longer form, but you can also write it in a compressed format, and this is what we're going to do. So we retrieve the post with the post, and then we're going to use the title and the content functions to display the data. So the title, you can guess what it's going to do. Probably display the retrieve current post title with the optional content, right? And I think if we do a few more of these, you're going to start getting the idea of how this works, hopefully. So we're calling the title to display the title, and what do you think the content is going to do? Any guesses? Right. Did I misspell something here? The content displays the post content. Right? And again, it can be as basic, these are all optional arguments, so you can just call the function, or you can pass the arguments so you can get a more customized experience. Right? All right. Each post title should be a link to a single post, with the link being the permalink for this post. And also you can give ID and class attributes to your article tags for additional customization. And so this is what our template that we started. We just started with a basic HTML template with just a couple of tags. This is what it would look like after we added all the code that we just went through here. And I haven't talked about the if statements, so so right here is where we say PHP if we have posts. So if is going to return, what is the if statement going to return? Sofian, what is the if, I didn't word this correctly. If we are checking with an if statement, what would be the resulting, what is the possible out? True or false? It can be either true or false. And so it's either true that there have posts or it's false. And if it's false, what is going to happen? Are you eating dinner? I'll ask somebody else. Okay. If it's true, then if it's false, then we're just going to drop. There is nothing to do, right? But if it's true, then we're going to go in the loop, and now we're going to have inside the if loop a nested while. Inside the if statement, a nested while loop, and the while loop is going to say while we have posts. And if that's true, it's going to call the post. And it will continue doing it because remember that in the while loop, we check. I'm sorry?
Until there's no more.
Until there is no more, exactly. And let's see here. So if you have a while statement, it's checking for posts, for example. And then it's going to display the posts. if there are no posts, it's not even going to go in here. But if there are, it's going to go. And then when there are no more posts to display. When it goes back up here, this is going to be false, and then that's when it's going to drop out of the loop. Does this make sense? And this is just written in a compressed form, but this is what the loop is. And then we display the permalink and the title to the post. And then we display the content. We check the content already, right? This is the content of the blog post. And then, okay, someone. So the way, I'm sorry about this, but this is in the loop and it should have been indented. And it didn't really, doesn't look like it. Right. Yeah. The indentation didn't work very well. We are now displaying inside the loop, and this is the end. Here is the end while, and then end while. And else is going to say sorry, but no post to display. So I apologize because the indentation is off, and that's maybe confusing. But these two lines are part of the. That's how each blog line is going to get displayed, right? So for each post, you're going to display the permalink, the post, permalink, and the title. So right now, that's what we're displaying, and then the content in a paragraph, right? And then we end our while, and then our else. So we have an if, and then the else statement, if the if is false, it's going to be to say sorry, but no posts. And then we call an end if to the if, right?
So this is maybe a tangent question, but in PHP, do you always need to have an end if or end while? There's
Right.
usually not a bracket.
Right. So this is an alternate syntax. You could, if you didn't have the end if, you'd have to have a bracket. And this is preferred because a single bracket in PHP quotes is very easy to miss, right? You just have to put a PHP tag so that you can put a closing curly brace, and then you close your PHP.
Got it.
And instead, it's easier on the
Then so there's
developer
no
eyes.
opening curly brace either.
No,
Right,
because of
okay.
this alternative syntax.
Okay.
We actually talked about this in class in chapter 4. I forgot.
But
4.
you could do either, right? That's my understanding.
Yeah, either or.
Okay.
Either or is fine.
That's right.
Right. And then you close your div and your body and the HTML, and there you are. So this is how the template works. And I have a template for us that it has a little bit more than what you have here, but you can upload it. And I did upload it, so let me change it and show you, and then I'd like you to try to do the same. It's the same theme, first theme is the same name, so you should just be able to replace the files from last time and then see a little bit more on your page, right? So let me log in real quick.
Are you recording?
Oh yeah, I believe so. So let's see. So we need to change the theme. So we go under appearance, themes.
Oh my God. I'm sorry. My cousin messaged me and I was like, what the hell? And just keep going.
I think I'll just keep going.
That's gonna be on the video too.
Yes, it
You
will.
guys, I'm an idiot.
All right, so here is the first theme, and we need to also add a screenshot at some point, but this is our first theme. And I have already uploaded the new set of files. And, don't expect anything dramatic, but it will be more than last time. It's very slow as well. Okay, so it's active now, and then visit the site. And now, as you can, last time was just a blank, right? And now you have the title, the posts, and even a comment, right? So now it's starting to display content inside the theme. My content that is the same as the other themes is now getting pulled here, right? So what you can do now, and I should add, the theme in GitHub has a little more than what we talked about, but you should be able to follow. So don't worry about the stuff we haven't covered yet, we will. We haven't covered in splitting in header and footer, but if you'd like to try to make your theme look as beautiful as this one, then you can go to the Seattle Central canvas and then go through the exercise of downloading this folder and then uploading it to FTP and activating it on your WordPress site, okay? So here is the starting point. And then after we finish with that, maybe we can take a break, or if you like, we can just keep on going, and then Mark will show you a more complete project. All right, if you'd like to try this, and I would like you to try it, go to the Canvas week 2, theme 2 files, and then you need to download these files here. So however you want to do it, you might want to just download the folder, and then go. Do you remember how to upload them to? All right, so work on this for a few minutes. And would you like to take a break, or would you like to keep on going? I think that if there's a meme to describe me, is the confused revolver.
Okay.
Oh, it was week 2, right? I'm
It's
like,
week
what?
2.
Yeah. First,
Right.
Oh. Oh, there we go. Yeah. Sometimes don't right click it. Just download the zip file. Click on download. Yeah, we did. Okay. There. I just did the whole lot. First thing. And then I just redid it. Yeah, basically.
Does that affect anything because the name changes?
Why would it affect? I would, no, it just still be called first thing. See, here's my live preview. And it's your old blog stuff. Oh, and I finally have a menu now. I didn't have it on the first one. It makes it show up. I don't know if it's the first name. Mine's already the first name now, so.
No, you want this, you can, that's what I suggested before. You can get a branch and move up to see,
Okay.
all right, so we see some blocks shown here.
So many blogs.
So many blocks.
So cute.
It's amazing. It's going to be amazing. It's going to be so good.
Just tremendous.
It's gonna be huge.
Yeah. Anyone have any problems besides something?
Well, yeah, I think it's-
Sorry, it's only
We're having so many problems.
Yeah, no, it's okay. I was watching.
I'm going to ask the question. You exact question.
So when Mark returns, give us a demo.
Yeah,
But didn't you learn how to use all those things properly, like
And change 10. I keep telling you that's where I learned it. And you didn't have to because the group is too good. A local host.
Your own laptops. The reason we don't do it here is because we don't get the machine actually shoot it. Because that's
Yeah.
the proper way.
I can show you how to do it. Sorry.
It's just because of setting it up. You know what? How about for like, Mike, if you want to set up, that would be great.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, I already did it, but that would be helpful for everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's one for the, we can decide. Great. I get to look at what's coming up on the schedule right now.
Did you download me? Because that is a decent.
And Mark, you are being recorded.
Oh, okay.
So the regular main, I'm not sure how that works, but I use Mail Pro and test it.
It's really weird that this browser starts from a mobile view. It's zoomed in.
Right, it's the
Weird.
scale is set to the program. Someone maybe tested some page with a scale set to a different report.
Yeah,
Scale.
it's like stuck.
Yeah,
Yeah. It's like
that's right.
the I didn't do the I just did the development on it. I didn't do the design. Yeah.
Just the same way.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get it back to our regular. I guess this is.
What are you trying to do?
There we go. I'm just trying to get it to a regular Zoom. I guess this is kind of.
Let's see. Is this a com? You can close this. Let me make sure.
Well, I think this is okay. It'll be okay. All right. We're gonna wait for.
Yeah, just now.
Oh, okay.
Are you ready?
Yeah, sure.
All right. So if you're ready with the project with uploading the second version of the theme, then our next step will be we're not taking a break. So we decided not to take a break. Mark is going to show us a real theme that he developed and uploaded to a site that is now up. So take a look, and that should be, I think, very, very helpful.
Yeah. Thanks. I didn't. So this is a project I did for ITC 210. So as a developer, so I did all the development on the site. I didn't do anything with the design, but yeah, it's a music academy. So working with like young kids, kind of a focus on media, that sort of thing. So pretty simple, but they did have some media requirements in here. I guess I'll do just a little quick tour of the site here. We have about page. Of course, they have like teachers, so you can go through and look at the different teachers in there, and a little bit info about them. And this is actually live, so this is actually it's like one of the very few class projects that actually made it into the real world. So. And then of course you can go to classes. You can pick which kind of instrument you want to use, and then some of them have teachers, whichever teacher that you want to work with, and then of course they have media. So they have audio recordings. They have, you can check out some of their videos, and then of course some of their latest photos and stuff like that. So pretty simple, pretty straightforward. But so I think I'm going to do a little tour of the code. So I have it up on GitHub. You can actually look at it. It's Mark Pfaff. So github.com/markpfaff/WSMA update. If you want to peruse along with me. And a couple notes about this project. On this one, we used Bootstrap. I used Bootstrap less as well. So have you all heard of less before? It's this is advanced. This is one of those buzzwords that hopefully you learn in the future. But less is a CSS pre-compiler. They also, I've heard it described as a meta language. If you look in this is my folder here, this is my theme folder. You can see I have, of course, the style.css. I also have a style.less. Yeah. Oh, yeah. On this one? Okay. Let's see there. Okay. Yeah. And so I'll just give you a little, see there's this less folder here. And we have all these little kind of modular files. And kind of in a nutshell, less is, and also the other one is called Sass. It's like a way of doing CSS where you can use variables in it. You can do like nested sort of notation. So in CSS, you're usually just like block by block. And a lot of times you have to like repeat yourself for different things. And so you want to like change a color. Like if I wanted to change like this orange, but I had this orange color like a bunch of different places in my CSS. In regular CSS, you'd have to go through and like change each color reference. But in precompiler like less or Sass, you could do a variable for it. So you'd only have to change it in one spot. So there's all these little tricks that they kind of mix in. And it's really, as far as industry standard, like, it'd be one of the buzzwords I'd put on your list of things to kind of try to get familiar with. So I guess we won't get too much into that. But let's look at one of these, see if I have a good example of what it looks like. So like here, if you know what like a regular media query looks like, the whole like long line of screen width, that sort of thing. I can't even remember offhand how you typically would notate it. But this is actually like a variable that's doing a media query, but it's super like shortened and a little easier to read. And so you can kind of customize stuff like that. You'd say like, you could even do one that's like desktop size. And that could be, and it could be like min width, 10, 24 pixels or something like that. So you have all these abilities to kind of do variables and stuff like that. Anywho, so down the road, you can look at less or Sass. I would recommend Sass because that's the one that's most popular now. Less and Sass are pretty much kind of the same in how they function. The notation is a little bit different, but as far as like adoption and popularity, Sass is more popular. Like Bootstrap used to use less, used to integrate less into it, but now they're switching to Sass. So I think it's becoming more of a standard. And then I also used Bootstrap. Has anyone tried Bootstrap before? Played with Bootstrap? Oh, great. So you all have, okay. One like really cool thing about, Bootstrap, you have to go into the HTML and you put in like the different classes, like the column MD3 or whatever to like show how many columns you have. Yeah, the Jumbotron, that sort of thing. Wait, if you're using less, you can actually say like name it like your banner div, and then you can put all those little Bootstrap classes underneath your custom little name. So you put one name in your HTML, like banner, the class is banner. You can go into your Sass precompiler and you can just say like, okay, so the banner div has column MD3, and there's all these sort of like subclasses. And so then you don't even have to go in and like add classes to your HTML. You just hang out in your little CSS, your little Sass. I don't know if that makes sense, but it's kind of like nesting. You can like do a lot of like nesting and consolidation of your code. Let's see. Yeah, well, I guess I'll move on from that and just get to WordPress here. So looking at this, we should probably take a look at the style.css because that's kind of the starting point, the style.css and the index. So you can see here that, of course, we have our theme name, we have authors, description, that sort of thing. We also added in plugin, so plugin info, just like what plugins that we had for our theme that were kind of like what plugins our theme was dependent on, basically. And then, of course, you have a little blurb about Bootstrap that kind of comes with just using Bootstrap in there. And then a huge, massive style sheet there. Let's take a peek at, yeah, I won't get too much into that. But the last, it's like, you actually like, this file is just like bringing in all those little modules that you saw in that other folder. And so it's basically like you can kind of organize everything how you want, and then it'll stuff it all into that style.css when it compiles it in the end. All your variables and everything, it puts everything together for you. That's the compiling part of it. And then, so we can also take a look just kind of at some of the other files that we have in here. Of course, we have functions.php. But I think one thing, as far as like talking about process and like a starting point for building a theme like this. Of course, you go through the whole design process with the client and such. But there's a couple different ways that you can approach building a theme. And one that I know when I took the class from Mike, his way of doing it was like you would build your web pages just like how you would do like a custom HTML page. So no crazy, PHP or whatnot, just kind of doing the style of the page. And then you would kind of swap out each piece of the page. So say like on this page, you would build everything like you normally would in HTML. And then you would start kind of switching out like each portion. So like latest news, this isn't going to be static HTML. This is going to come from, something that they input into the panel. So that means instead of just having, HTML text, you hear a little like p tag, you're actually going to put in that function that draws from that. Yeah. Oh, great. Oh, okay, good. Yeah. So, and then why don't I'll open up my front page while we're talking about this page. Yeah. So I guess the approach that I take more now is that I've done like a handful of WordPress sites. So I already have like some index.phps that I've used before that I'm really familiar with. And so I can kind of use them as a template, and like a starting point. And I have like my whole like kind of SaaS library that I have set up with Bootstrap. And so I'm not going to like redo all that work again every time I do. Yeah, I do a project. So, but I would really recommend that to learn it, you need to kind of break it down and, look at like a regular HTML page and then how does each little component get kind of integrated into the WordPress, kind of way of doing things. And then after a while, you kind of develop your own little kind of starting point with templates and things like that you create.
So when you design your first template, do you just design it as a whole page, or do you need to grow your media queries for responsive design as WordPress in the process of putting templates?
It does not fix it for you. So like all the styles and everything, you're gonna create all the styles, including media, and things like that. It does have things when it comes to like images. It has some like responsive image functionality. But as far as everything else, you're doing all the styles all the way down to mobile. Things like that. Yeah, there's a lot of them that aren't out there too. So yeah, okay, so looking here, this is our front page. So I'm just going to find, so we have latest news here, and we have like what we would call, I guess, what you would call CTAs, call to actions, kind of in the middle here. And one of them is called latest news. Let's see if we can find it in here. So here's my CTA row, and here we go. So we have home CTAs, and then we have our little latest news post type. So this is basically some code that is running a query looking for the name home latest news of post type page. So it's basically all it's doing. It's going back to your admin panel and it's looking for a page that's called home latest news, and it's going to throw the content into this little box right here. So when you're going through and you're doing your HTML files, you're going to have maybe like some filler text, some lorem ipsum, and then you're going to say like, oh, well, they need to be able to edit this part. It's going to have to come from the admin panel. We're going to need a function that goes and finds where they entered it and puts it into the page. Does that make sense? Yeah, okay. I know like with WordPress, it definitely, it's because like they've taken building a website, and because of the admin panel functionality, they start adding in all the sort of ways of so for the user to customize without having to get into HTML. So it's just kind of all these different functions and stuff like that. It's just kind of like you just have to go through it a bunch of times before it starts kind of making sense how everything is coming together. One thing like we did for this client is with each page, we had to make like a little map for them as to like where they could edit each thing. So like, where can I find this quote in my admin panel and like edit it? And that's kind of like a process that you have to go through as a developer, is like, how is your client going to edit each of these things? Is it going to be something static that just sits here in the HTML? Or is it something that's going to be dynamic and I'm going to have to use like a query or a function to go grab it? Okay, so you can see like home CTAs here. So like in theory, you know, if I'm doing another project and the design is similar to this site, I have a banner, I have some CTAs underneath it, you know, I have like another box down here, I can use this code that I've already written here and kind of repurpose it for that new website. So when you're first starting out, you need to kind of go step by step, but kind of in the future, you can use what you've built before as kind of a template. So notice that for this is called frontpage.php. Has anyone looked into the hierarchy? You did? Okay, good. Okay, cool. So you looked at, so there's just like this built-in kind of naming hierarchy. And so when you have like your main homepage, WordPress just looks for different names. It can be like, I think, home, front page, then index, you know, and it kind of has names that it goes to first. So we did a front page.php, and then you can also in your admin panel change kind of your default template for each page that you're doing. So we're going with frontpage.php, so that's going to be our home landing page. And of course, we have the get header, and then all of our content, all of our custom content for this front page, and then we have the footer at the bottom. Another thing I always do is I put a little, this is commented out now, but when I'm developing, I'll put a little like text label on each page that just says this is from frontpage.php, because it's really easy to lose track of like what page is producing this content, especially when it like WordPress automatically defaults to names. You can like forget to like switch a setting, or your name isn't quite right, and it's actually using a different template for a page. So it's good to kind of give yourself a little note. So if I uncomment this, then it'll just show up at the bottom and it'll tell me that it's frontpage.php that it's pulling from. So we can take a look at classes. So I clicked on the main classes page, and we can go back here and class main. So look at this. So I have the template name, and ooh, I remember the admin. Maybe I'll come back to that. So I have the template name here. This lets you kind of select it from the admin panel if you want to change the template that creates this page. So the main classes page, we have, of course, the main container and row. And then we have the loop, so that looks familiar. And going into, and the loop basically is grabbing any content that is that the user has entered in the classes page. So maybe I'll log in so you can just take a look at what they've entered, just kind of match everything up here. Okay. Okay, so we have the classes page here. We'll click on it. And so the only content that we've entered is this sentence right here. You can see that sentence shows up right here. Now we have the mobile view of this page. So that's the content there. And that's what our loop here is grabbing. So basically, whenever you run the loop, depending on how you customize it, it's just going to grab what content they've added into their little content entry box there. And then below it, you can notice that these pictures down here are kind of showing up, and they represent each category, so bass, brass, each of the instruments. And this is something that we don't want to have them change. We don't want users getting in there and like messing up what that looks like. So these are actually more static. So if we scroll down a little bit, we have the loop, we go past the loop, and we have class main thumb. And so this is where we actually get into producing these images here. So I just have a link, and then I have a post thumbnail, medium, and that's representing each of these pictures. And to do this, I actually have what we would call a custom loop. So it's going up here. You can see that I have, I'm with this thumb query here, it's kind of doing a custom version of this loop up here. So it's, again, like when we talk about the loop, it's grabbing content for you. So down here with this thumb query, I'm doing basically a custom loop, or what they would call it maybe a secondary loop. And I'm saying like, okay, for this custom loop, I want you to look at page types. I want you to look at the post parent ID here. And kind of long story short, it's looking at this page, classes, and it's looking for the children of that page. And that's kind of defining where it's like, where its starting point is. And then it's going to look at each of the child pages of this post parent to grab each of their thumbnails. So long story short, it's looking at this page that it's on, classes, and saying like, what are the subpages of classes? And they happen to be bass, brass, drums, group classes. And then it's saying like, okay, go through and grab each of the thumbnails from each of those classes and display them on the page. It's probably really confusing when I talk through all that. But it's basically, this is kind of an example of some of the code that you definitely use. And by the way, you know, this is MIT licensed, so it's up on my GitHub, so you're welcome to look at it, try it out, and rip it apart. Yeah. Yeah, so this is kind of an example of kind of using that loop in a different way. It's like more of a secondary loop. Grabbing content from your admin panel. So this is the main classes page. And then if we look at some of these subclasses, so bass, if I look at the bass page and we scroll down, we see a picture of what I think is a bass guitar. And then we have it showing up there. So when I talk about this secondary loop going and looking for, you know, child pages of classes, it's finding bass, which is a child of the classes page there. And it says like, oh, look, there's a thumbnail. It's a medium thumbnail that it grabs and then it displays on the page. Yeah. What else? Oh, yeah, of course. So functions. So there's some like kind of extra stuff that I did on this one. You know, you don't necessarily have to do this, you know, remove version info. It's more like a extra little security thing. But you notice like, so we have the register menus, which is kind of like a basic kind of starting point function just to get your menus set up. Registering sidebars. And then if you look at this function down here, we have a couple different sidebars. So I have the primary sidebar. Let's zoom back out, get the sidebar shown. So we have like a primary sidebar. I have a footer sidebar down here. So that might be a little counterintuitive that you would use a sidebar for your footer, but that's one of the applications. And then footer copyright. So basically what this does, let's go to the admin panel and we can look at appearance widgets here. I'll zoom back in. We have our little sidebars here. If you are just opening this up and you haven't done any customization in your functions, your sidebar isn't going to show up. These aren't going to show up here. It's only when you add them to functions in this way that then they show up in your admin panel. So, so if I hadn't put this code in here, like my primary sidebar would not show up here in my admin panel. So, what? Yeah, you have to register. So same with your menu. Same with if you want multiple different sidebars, you need to register them. And then once you register your sidebars, you need to call them within whatever page you're going to use them. So, yeah.
Yeah, is it in there?
It's not in there, but only have to register a menu. And then we go to our traditional registration. So far, we only registered one thing.
Oh, I put it in the. I think it is in the header or the footer here.
We haven't done the division into header yet.
Okay.
We will see it.
So I'm just getting lost in my theme. Just looking for an example where I call the sidebar. There you go. So it's my basic page template here. And then you can see here I have PHP get sidebar primary. So I'm saying on all the pages where I'm using just the basic page template, I want it to go through the loop. I want it to display all this content, and then I want the sidebar to show up there. So you originally you create the sidebar, you register it, you register the sidebar in your functions, then it shows up here, and you can do some like add some widgets to your sidebar, whatever you want to kind of show up there. Then you need to make sure whichever page that you're using in the template, you have to call the sidebar as well. So I know it's a lot. It's definitely, if you haven't looked through WordPress before, it's kind of a lot of things in different places, and you just have to kind of like learn where each of these places on. It's like a lot of memorization. It's just kind of like a lot of memorization of where things are, and going to the codex a lot. So register sidebars. And then there's different customizations you can do. I wanted to have those thumbnails for each of the classes show up on that page. So I added theme support for post thumbnails in there. I also wanted a lot of different sizes of pictures for the theme. So I added some sizes in there. And then this function, get child pages, is actually used on when I have this little sidebar that lists basically all the child pages of classes. So all the all the class pages, of course, are child pages of the main classes page. This is the function that basically kind of creates this list, if I call that function. It's going to look for, okay, this parent has this many child pages, and it will list them there. So this is kind of the code that does that. Does it make sense when I say child pages? Okay, and then when you're looking at admin panel here, on any page here, you can see like there's a little dash here on teachers, community, testimonials. And that means it's a child page of another page. So I could look at teachers. Let's see, maybe I can just do click. Yeah, and you see how it has parent about. So this means that teachers is a child page of about. So when I go to the about page, I click on it, you can see that I have the child pages listed there. So it's each of them that is a child page. Yeah. Yeah, so teachers is listed under about, and this is your about page, and it's showing like the child pages of about our teachers community testimony. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Oh, no.
Yeah, so if you do on any of these, you can do quick edit. Yeah, and then it shows you a little snippet of what's going on. So like, again, so community parent page is about.
But then it's also, that quick edit, it says teachers about, so it's like it's already underneath about, so you need to necessarily edit to see that.
You're right. Yeah. And that little line next, yeah. Yes. Yeah. Tells you, kind of shows you. Yeah. And then so the other thing is on these pages, you can see right here, we have the template. So this is default template. If I open this up, means that I have some other templates here, class main page, individual class page, media page. Those are custom templates that I've created. And they are something in here. We have class main page, individual classes, and we have media page. So the classes main page here, if I go in here and look at it, that's where that title shows up. The template name here is classes main page, and that's what shows up in there for your custom template. Yeah, so in functions, if there's anything else in functions that's interesting. Oh, yeah. I was trying to explain to somebody this before. Do you know how, so we usually do our CSS style link in the header, it's at the top, and you do your little link href at the top. There's actually, when you're doing WordPress, of course, it has a different way of calling that style sheet. So you actually wouldn't put it in your header. You would actually put it in this functions file where it's calling your styles. So you have like the style sheet in here. So it's basically, instead of you manually typing in your style sheet in the header, it dynamically pulls your style sheet for you. So you can definitely, for your theme just to work, you could do a hard-coded link. But this is like the best practice way is calling it from your functions. So you would call your styles, and then you also call any scripts that you're going to use. You don't hard code them in. You don't hard code them. You just call them from the functions. And to figure things out like this, it's just you kind of go to you just Google and then find the article from the codex, and it'll go through how to what they call on-queuing scripts and on-queuing styles. It's their fancy word for it. These are just kind of little extra things. Yeah, nothing too crazy there. Yeah. What else? Yeah. Yeah.
I think that I approached this class the wrong way, like the first time, because I didn't understand, like, and it's actually I haven't brought it up, but I like didn't understand that you have to reference the codex because it's a pre-written function. So like, I
Yeah.
felt like I was copying and pasting, and I was like, this was wrong.
Right. Yeah.
But then it's like, of course, when you're starting out with WordPress, you kind of have to because they're pre-written functions.
Yeah.
So I didn't really get that, like, that's part of it is that it's memorization, like you said.
Yeah.
Instead of just like, oh, I'm gonna learn the syntax of PHP and write PHP.
Yeah.
It doesn't work that way. So like you do a lot of going back and forth.
Yeah.
So when you said that, I was like, oh my God, that's so accurate.
Yeah, and I think that's where a lot of people will kind of struggle with WordPress is like they'll try to just use all the stuff they've learned and make it work. And it's like, no, WordPress is a different animal. And the background on WordPress was that it was just a blogging format. It wasn't really a website building sort of, framework, which it has become now, but it was so popular as a blogging format that it kind of grew into this like major website build. And it's like, what, 25% of websites are WordPress now? It's crazy. So you have all this weird sort of like code that's been grandfathered in from those days that doesn't make sense. Like if they were to redo it, they would not do it that way. So, the what? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, it's really, WordPress is not intuitive. Bottom line, yeah. 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 It's like, well, and then it can be pretty straightforward for users, but not for developers. Yeah. Anybody trying to learn it. Yeah.
It's a function that you didn't
Right.
write. So I'm like, okay,
Yeah. Yeah. What else? There's so much with WordPress. But any questions on the tour? The way you don't know enough to ask a question about it. Yeah. Yeah, and and a lot of the stuff that I'm going through now is like down the road a ways. You can build a lovely WordPress site without doing half the stuff that I did in this one. Yeah. Oh yeah. But like the less and the all that Bootstrap and things like that. You can build a site without all that stuff. Cool. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
So then if you have something else you can think of later that you want to show next time you come, then
Yeah.
we have so many files there.
Yeah. I don't know if you signed in.
I need to turn my recording off and then I don't know what I'm saying. I thought who I am, right? Confused about it. Okay, let me just a second. Let me sign out here. Turn off our recording.